Yo Joes and Agents of Cobra Command, my name is Steve, this is GI Joburg, and I have finally popped my reaction cherry. Yes, I bought one of these 5 POA POSs, partly to satisfy my curiosity. But also, there are very legitimate reasons for why I bought this figure. Why Snake Eyes? With a plethora of different offerings from Super7, from cartoon-inspired characters to characters that had a handful of appearances in the comic book, why did I go with something as basic B as Snake Eyes? I mean, there are so many versions of this. Any GI Joe collector worth his salt has at least 3 or 4, a dozen. I went with Snake Eyes because I have a fascination with this cartoon-accurate coloring. This deep purple with the lighter purple details, the black, the ungloved hands. Those of you who are au fait with the cartoon will know that this is from the Master Vice, the first GI Joe miniseries, or if you prefer the true title, The Adventures of GI Joe, which aired in September of 1983. In it, our premier non-speaking commando was depicted like this, and then subsequently was never shown like this again. So it was kind of a flash in the pan, first shot at our favorite time-honored character. But the cartoon is kind of a fetish of mine at the moment because I never really had the cartoon growing up. I was in my late 20s when I first watched the Master Vice, and so this guy is something entirely new. Even a character as tried and true as Snake Eyes can still have new reinventions for GI Joe fans who discover these things kind of piecemeal in stages. Anyways, the card is amazing. You can see exactly why people want to collect these things. The presentation is all part and parcel of it. And the artwork on the back is also gorgeous. I remember poring over these images for hours and hours. In fact, I joked with a Joe Bro the other day that I think we probably spent more time poring over the paperwork than we ever did with the plastic. The excitement of what you could collect. What an amazingly collectible line GI Joe was. Every item of it was collectible. Especially these amazing file cards. I'm not going to read it out, feel free to pause and read it for yourself, but it is a faithful recreation of the classic file card. Plus an animated cell, just to sell exactly where this figure's coming from. Nice touch. It could have gone with the card art, instead they decided to give you something new. Or old. I will draw attention to one thing, however. Has received extensive training in mountaineering, undercover demolitions. It used to be underwater demolitions. Adult collectible, not a toy. No shit. It's unusual for me to do a take during the actual releasing of the figure, but let me just say that this bubble is one sturdy mother. It's a lot thicker than I'm used to. It's taken quite a bit of sawing. I don't have the sharpest blade, but it is very much up to the task of a Hasbro bubble. This, however, it's a thicker piece of plastic. Plastic-free packaging be damned, I guess Super7 don't care. This figure had been reduced from 35 Australian to then 25 Australian, and I got it on a 20% discount day, which made it 20 Oz dollars, which works out to 14 US. Even so, maybe you'd consider it overpriced, I don't know. A new toy, you're unlikely to do better than 14 US, I'd say. Even on the tray, he's pretty well secured. Would you look at that? There are plastic elastics, tape, it's all crisscrossed at the back, another piece of tape. My goodness, man, he's going nowhere. You could display them like this if you wanted to. Free me! Carbonite block of GI Joe. Well everyone, the Shadow Man is finally free of his plastic prison, and he's everything a fresh piece of plastic should be. Pretty much untouched by human hand, clean paint jobs, very basic paint. Time to crack those articulation points for the first time, and yep, they all kind of have a bit of a snap to them. Yeah, he's Star Wars or Action Force, but with slightly less dynamic legs. I find their legs to be just a little too stiff. A little bit of juice in the knees would have gone a long way to helping these guys just look more natural. But you can't knock their style. They've stuck with it through a myriad of different properties. So Super7 have something going on. It's just not necessarily my thing. So the reason I got this guy, apart from my obvious fascination with these cartoon accurate colors, is he comes with two accessories. The first is the XMLR, which if you've got Snow Job, or if you've got pretty much any like 2000s era GI Joe packs, you will have this gun. Here I bring in the Hasbro example, which is slightly smaller, finer, but it's a handsome replication. The details are there. This one has a recessed cross, this one has a raised cross. The sights are a bit more mongrel on the original release. They're a bit finer in the Super7 release. But yeah, it's absolutely recognizable as the XMLR. But more important than that gun, there's this interesting little pistol that he came with, which, if you watch the cartoon very closely, is something that Snake Eyes is seen using. I really like this thing, because Snake Eyes is ubiquitous with the Uzi, right? But every now and then, in media, you see Snake Eyes depicted with pistols. But I feel like not any basic 45 or Beretta will do. Snake Eyes always needed something a little bit more special. This gun, for all its Flash Gordon stylings and these fins and whatnot, kind of fits the bill as something freaky enough for Snake Eyes to make as his sidearm. I mean, it obviously is going to go into the Super7 guy's hands. This is the first time I'm trying it, so forgive me a little bit of a fumble. Yeah, it's a snug fit and it looks good. And it kind of makes his very stiff, one-armed articulation make sense. Yeah, I mean, that's a believable enough hands up pose. I mean, if Snake Eyes could even say hands up. But if we are able to bring in a real GI Joe for a second. Oh yes, there he is. 1983's swivel arm Snake Eyes in all his monotone glory. If we disarm this guy and then give him this thing, let's see what that does. Let's see if it even fits. It's a bit of a loose fit because my guy does have slightly stretched out thumbs. But with a little bit of finagling, you can kind of get that to make sense. I'm not about to paint up my OG in purple, but it's not a bad look, guys. Or am I just trying to justify spending $15 US on this? The styling is very flat, very basic, very animation spec. It's slavishly accurate to the animation for its own detriment, but then again, if it was hyper detailed, it wouldn't be that thing that you see on screen, so I'd say they kinda nailed it. It feels like a slightly silly thing to discuss, but here we go anyways. Articulation is 5 points of articulation, which gives you swivels at the neck, swivels at the arms or the shoulders, and then swivels at the legs. No waist swivels. Some basic articulated figures have a waist. Super7 does not. And something else that kind of makes me wonder if this is as articulated as an Action Force Palitoy figure or even Star Wars is how limited the backswing is. He cannot kick his leg back. That's as far as you get because of the diaper, if you want to call it that. However, he can do a 90-degree seated position, so there are most likely vehicles out there that will accommodate them quite handsomely. But without knee bends, there are, I'm sure, an equal number of vehicles that cannot accommodate these guys. Hey, would you look at that? He fits inside a classic Vamp just fine. Yes, I know this is a Street Fighter's Street Striker, but it's the same mold, so I'll take that as a win. Now, the Vamp is notorious for struggling to accommodate even the intended action figures, so imagine my surprise when this 5 POA guy could actually sit as deep as a regular O-ring figure. But if you thought that was shocking, check this out. Snake Eyes fits inside the front seat of the 2023 HasLab Sky Striker, which blows my mind, because once again, I struggle to get O-ring figures in there. Of course, he doesn't have a back hole, and so will not fit onto the seat peg, but you can't deny that he's in there. He's at the controls, and he sits deep enough for the canopy to close comfortably over his head, as comfortably as for any other figure. Of course, it's dubious having a mute at the controls of a jet that requires radio communication with firstly the ground and his Rio. Talk to me, Snake! But using these guys as vehicle drivers gives them the perfect purpose. Provided you find enough vehicles for them to fit, these are excellent occupants, and frees up a slot for a more articulated figure to be holding a rifle. In conclusion, I don't think I'm going to say anything that hasn't been said by reviewers hundreds of times before me, but these things are fun for what they are. They are too highly priced for what they are, but they are hella pretty, and scored me a nice little arsenal for my real Joes. Side by side with the classic O-ring, you can see what I mean. The reactions are just too stiff. It's as if the O-ring always gave Joes a little bit of a slouch. There's always something a little bit juicy about these guys. Super7 reaction figures, yeah. If they're your thing, good for you. I don't think I'm gonna pick up any more, but I don't have buyer's remorse. OG Snake Eyes is certainly happy he's got a new blaster. And the next time I put on Mass Device, I'll know which figure I'm going to reach for. 1983, of course. Yo, Joburg, everybody.